Turn in your Bibles to Hebrews chapter 13, and we'll read some verses there. Hebrews 13, and it's from verse 20 to 25. Just a short reading this morning. The writer says, I've written to you in few words. It takes an hour to read it. Have you ever written a letter that takes an hour to read? There we are. Just in few words. So he's someone, whoever it is, he certainly likes to write letters. Verse 20 then. Now may the God of peace, who brought up our Lord Jesus from the dead, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant, make you complete in every good work to do his will, working in you what is well-pleasing in his sight through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. I appeal to you, brethren, bear with the word of exhortation, for I have written to you in few words. Know that our brother Timothy has been set free, with whom I shall see you if he comes shortly. Greet all those who rule over you, and all the saints. Those from Italy greet you. Grace be with you all. Amen. And the book of Hebrews poses quite a number of problems for us, doesn't it? It's one of those books, we don't know who wrote it. We don't know where it was going to, the letter. We don't know really when it was written. And so it's all we know is that it was written in that first century. But there are some clues for us as we go through the book, and there are varying understandings and interpretations as to why and to whom the book was written. One of the ones that I quite like is that, James and with Peter, 1 Peter and 2 Peter, it's a book that's addressed specifically for Jewish believers. It was addressed to them, and certainly there is very little of Gentile understanding in these words that we have here. And the little comment at the end, all they of Italy salute you, suggests that it's those Italian believers that are out amongst the different provinces, the different countries, and they're saluting the Jewish believers perhaps that are in Rome. The time of writing, it's difficult really to bring it all together, but it's generally agreed that it's probably before 70 AD when the temple was destroyed. It would have been mentioned at the destruction of the temple. That's the general thought in regards of that. I don't know if that is set in concrete in that sense, but certainly before 70 AD. And it's probably written as well just as the persecutions began. So we're looking at the persecutions of Nero. If you think that he reigned from 54 to 68 AD, we find that the persecutions began around about 63, 64 AD. And so the letter, whoever has penned it perhaps to a group of believers that are about to go through difficult days. And with them being Jewish believers, they belong to an illegal cult called Christianity. And the attraction, the appeal of perhaps looking for safety, looking for respectability in Judaism is an appealing option to them. And this is just one thought that different theologians have come up with. The persecutions have begun. The option of leaving an illegal cult. It wasn't legalized by Rome for many, many years. And moving over to Judaism, which was a legal religion, may have been appealing to the believers. Whether that's true or not, I don't really know. But the writer in Hebrews 11 talks of this mindset, specifically talking of Abraham and his immediate descendants and his wife Sarah. It says this: if they had been mindful of the country from whence they came out, they would have had opportunity to have returned. And certainly, the emphasis of Hebrews is that they don't return, but they look unto Jesus. They go forth to him. In fact, the final let us that we have, let us go forth to him. And so it's a book that is written as an exhortation. We would say that it is a book of Bible teaching, of theology concerning the Old Testament. But the writer says, above all, it's a word of exhortation. Hebrews 13 says this, verse 22, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, suffer the word of exhortation I have written, a letter of few words to you. Suffer the word of exhortation. Suffer the word of encouragement. And so we find in this letter, we find certainly references to personal responsibility of you and your. But the emphasis throughout the book is not necessarily you and your, although we'll be bridging that at some point. The emphasis is, let us. It's us and we. It's one of exhortation. It's not one of saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to stop doing this. It is always, let us. It's a wonderful spirit that is resting upon the book. It's not a book from an elevated position speaking down to people below. It is a book where the writer is standing with them and saying, look, let's go together on this. Let's go together. It's a wonderful spirit on that. Jacob, in his later years, understood this type of spirit when he met his brother Esau on the way back home now, coming back from the land that he'd been in for so many years, coming back with his family. Esau was so eager to get him home. But Jacob turned and said to this to them, understanding the needs of all the family, I will lead on gently. And that's the perspective that the Hebrew writer has here. I will lead on with you. That's the way that he is speaking and writing throughout the letter. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful spirit that says, let's go on together. 15 times, at least that's how many times I found, 15 times he uses this term, let us. Considering there's only 13 chapters, so we got over one a chapter, although don't all appear in each individual chapter. Let us. I was thinking of a song that we'll sing later on, the chorus, because again, this is the type of frame that he's speaking in. Come on, heaven's children, the city is in sight. There will be no sadness on the other side. And that's the spirit that he's writing in. He is not being dogmatic, although there are times that his language is strong. He is one that wants to walk with his people together. It's a wonderful spirit to have in an age when it can be so easy to distance yourself. Let us go on together, is the cry. There are 15 verses. I remember listening up in Dowlais Church on one occasion when a man was going to preach on the names of Jehovah, and he had 17 names. I thought, oh, Romy, he's got 17 points by now. So, I haven't got 15 points. I've just picked out a few that help us to look at this book and understand the letter, the spirit that is written in, because that is so important when you read this letter. The important emphasis is that you must go on together. And so, let's have a little look at them. Chapter 4, verse 1 says simply this, let us fear. Let us fear. It's not fear in the sense of running away, but let us fear that the promises that were left to those people that put them aside in former days, let us fear that we don't miss out like they missed out. And then he goes on to say, let us fear this promise that was going to take them into what the Hebrew writer calls rest. We find here, he goes on to say in verse 11, let us labour. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? Let us labour, therefore, to enter into his rest. And so we're not going to go into what the rest of God is. It's a triangular theme that you would have to look at. First and foremost, it talks about the peace of God. Then it talks about the promise of God, the land of Canaan. Then it talks about the ultimate, the completion. It has nothing to do with the Sunday, really. Nothing to do at all with that at all. That was just a picture of what God's people were to be, a people of rest. a people of holy day, not holiday, a people of holy day. And so we find with this that let us therefore fear, let us therefore labor. Let us, in chapter 6, verse 2, let us go on unto completion. When we have in the authorized version perfection, it frightens us, it stands back. But what that word perfection means, let us go on to completion. And he goes on to say in chapter 10, verse 23, let us hold fast our confession without wavering, for he is faithful that is promised. You see, this let us here, it's to ensure that you receive all that God has for you. That's what the letter is for in so many of these different instances, these verses that are brought out. It's to let us ensure that we don't miss out on what God has given for the believer. And so they cite so many circumstances and historical facts concerning the children of Israel where they missed out. Perhaps the ultimate one. For the people that were about to go into persecution, that had perhaps the option in their mind, in their mindset, of going back. See what it says in chapter 12. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is now set down at the right hand of God. They were in the same position. That which was set before them, the persecutions that were about to arise, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and now is complete, set down at the right hand of God. That's all the Hebrew writer is trying to do, is to get people to put themselves in the position of Jesus. We are told to look to him. We are told to consider him. We are told to see him. And finally, we are told to go forth to him. So we find in this letter these words of exhortation. Can we just say this? Let us receive what God has promised for us. And don't miss out. Don't miss out. The writer gives us ideas or answers as to how we can obtain help. Chapter 4, verse 16, 3 times in chapter 4, he says, let us. Let us come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and help in the time of trouble. And so, make sure that we don't miss out. And this is how you make sure that you don't miss out. Come boldly to the throne of grace. In chapter 10, verse 22, let us draw near with a true heart. Let us draw near. Another one that I found accidentally. I read over it, no matter how many times I read over it, I haven't seen it. Chapter 12, verse 22. Let's have grace. Let us have grace to serve God acceptably. And so we find that the writer doesn't leave them nonplussed. He gives them an understanding. We're to go on together. We're to go on together. But listen now, each one of us can come boldly to the throne of grace. Each one of us can find help and strength and mercy in the time of trouble. Each one of us can draw near. Each one of us can have grace to serve God acceptably. Each one of us can do that. The pastor doesn't just have it. The most junior of all the believers can have that same grace, that same drawing near, that same boldness to come to the throne of grace. We can all obtain help and mercy. And so the writer follows it through. But ultimately it says, in chapter 13, verse 13, let us go forth to him, outside the camp, bearing his reproach. Bearing his reproach. They were a people that had already suffered in earlier days. The writer tells them that. And God appreciates that. But they were going in for another round, another baptism of difficulties and troubles. And a weariness can come on you, because you know what it's like. I've been here before, you'd say. I've got the t-shirt for this. Why do I have to go through with it again? And so he writes you and says, now let's go forth to him, outside of the camp, outside of the city walls, bearing his reproach. And so the letter is a letter that is there to encourage people that are about to enter into a difficult time. Are you about to enter a difficult time? Are you in a difficult time? The answer, according to Hebrews, is let us go on. You say, Mark, I'm behind you. I can't catch up with you. I might be saying to some of you, I'm behind you. I can't catch up with you. Let us go on together. That sense, that collectivity, that the Church of God belongs in such a spirit like that. You say, well, I'll never catch you up. You'll be surprised what God can do. Come boldly to the throne of grace. Draw near to him. Receive grace from him to bring you through. Right in the middle of it now you are. We can wait together that we can come through. When I was in Crusaders, that's the youth work that was in Ealing. Roger had left, and I remember Mike Thomas, he stayed in the group. Quite a number finished. Martin Rees finished, Stephen finished. But all and fully understood the reasons that were there for them stepping aside. Some because they felt they were too old, their time had finished. Others because they needed a break. But I remember Mike Thomas penned a little song when I preached that day, or one evening, on Jacob and his family. I will lead on gently, I preached on. And Mike penned the song. And the song was just had these words with, come, oh come with me. And I forget the rest of the words. I remember asking him as to whether or not he could remember. He could remember the first line. Come with me. Will you come with me? And may I come with you. As a people, as a family, draw near to God. And in the midst of adversity, let's go on together and push forward. Just finished, coming to the end of the book. I read 2 books on holidays. One is a book that Ruth kindly got for me, Grace Outpoured of the Brennan, the little prayer house in West Wales. And the other one was a book that I've read numerous times, David Brainerd, but it was by a different writer. Brainerd survived completely by himself. Completely by himself. And there are occasions when God will provide for you in those circumstances. But the thing he longed for most of all was to be amongst the people of God. That's what he longed for most of all. And would spend hours in prayer praying for the Church of God in those early days of the United States of America. Praying much that the mercies of God would be there amongst those that gather before him. May we be a people that go on together in Christ. All being well, we look at Abraham tonight, at some of the things there. We move from collectivity, from let us and we, and the different things there, to Abraham, where God called him. I called him alone. And so we have personal responsibility tonight. And we'll have a little look at that. But over the coming weeks, I hope that we'll be able to share some thoughts from Hebrews.